Dave Taylor was a man who prided himself on being meticulous. A single father of 2 young children, he had worked tirelessly to afford the quaint, 3-bedroom house in an older, established neighborhood just outside of Austin, Texas. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect for his family. He had chosen the property carefully, not just for its proximity to good schools and a safe community, but also because it was free from the overreach of a homeowner association. Dave had done his homework, ensuring the property was excluded from the homeowner association that governed the neighboring streets. It was a regular Thursday morning when Dave's daily routine took an unexpected turn. After sending his kids off to school, he stepped out to check the mail. Among the usual stack of flyers, utility bills, and catalogs was a thick envelope with the homeowner association's logo prominently displayed on the front. Dave raised an eyebrow. He'd heard enough horror stories about homeowner associations to know their communications rarely brought good news. His curiosity was tinged with apprehension as he tore open the envelope. Inside, he found a letter that immediately sent his heart racing. It began with an ominous opening line. "Dear Mr. Taylor, it has come to our attention that your property, located at 1624 Cedar Ridge Lane, is in violation of multiple homeowner association bylaws. You are hereby assessed the following fines and penalties." Dave skimmed the list of alleged violations, his disbelief mounting with each bullet point. Failure to maintain lawn height under 6 inches, $500 fine. Unauthorized installation of a mailbox not compliant with homeowner association aesthetic standards, $750 fine. Unauthorized exterior paint color, $2,000 fine. Failure to submit a landscaping plan for homeowner association approval, $1,500 fine. The letter demanded immediate payment of $15,000 in accumulated fines, late fees, and legal costs, threatening legal action if payment wasn't received within 30 days. To add insult to injury, the final paragraph stated the homeowner association would file a lien on his property if he didn't comply. The letter also included a QR code for convenient online payment. Dave sat down at his kitchen table, clutching the letter, his mind racing. This had to be a mistake. His property wasn't even part of the homeowner association he'd specifically confirmed that when he bought the house. He reached for his purchase documents, which he had stored neatly in a file box in his closet. Within minutes, he found what he was looking for: the original deed and title documents, clearly stating his property was excluded from homeowner association jurisdiction. Relieved, he thought the issue would be easy to resolve. But something about the tone of the letter gnawed at him. It wasn't just a generic warning or clerical error, it felt deliberate. The language was aggressive, almost as if the homeowner association was confident in their claims. Dave decided to dig deeper before contacting them. He spent the next few hours researching the homeowner association online. The reviews from homeowners under its governance painted a grim picture. Words like bullying, predatory, and corrupt jumped out at him. Numerous posts described how the homeowner association imposed excessive fines, enforced rules inconsistently, and ignored homeowners' rights. One comment stood out: "Once the homeowner association sets its sights on you, it's almost impossible to fight them. They'll drown you in legal fees and outlast you in court." Dave's unease deepened. He realized this might not be as simple as pointing out their mistake. He needed a plan. First, he called the homeowner association's office directly. After being placed on hold for nearly 20 minutes, a curt woman answered. "This is Linda from Cedar Ridge Homeowner Association. How can I assist you today?" Dave explained the situation calmly. "There seems to be a mistake. I received a notice claiming my property is in violation of homeowner association rules, but my house isn't even part of the association. I have the original deed and purchase documents that confirm this." Linda didn't miss a beat. "Our bylaws were updated last year to include additional properties within our jurisdiction. Your property falls under the revised boundaries." Dave's jaw tightened. "Revised boundaries? I wasn't notified of any such change. I never signed any agreement to join the homeowner association." Linda's tone remained cold. "As per the updated bylaws, a vote was held among homeowner association members, and the expansion was approved. Notification letters were sent to all affected properties." "I never received any notification," Dave said firmly. "And even if I had, I didn't agree to this. My property was explicitly excluded when I purchased it. Linda sighed audibly. Sir, we are within our rights to amend the bylaws. If you disagree, I suggest you consult an attorney. In the meantime, the fines stand. Have a good day. The line went dead before Dave could respond. Frustrated but undeterred, he decided to attend the next homeowner association meeting, scheduled for the following Tuesday evening. He wanted answers and witnesses. Over the next few days, Dave combed through local property records and spoke with his neighbors. To his dismay, several of them had received similar notices. One elderly couple had already paid thousands in fines, fearing the homeowner association's threats of foreclosure. Another neighbor, a single mother, was in tears, unsure how she'd fight them without legal help. Tuesday evening arrived, and Dave entered the packed meeting hall. The room buzzed with tension, as many other homeowners were there to voice their frustrations. The Homeowner Association Board, a group of 5 individuals led by a stern-faced woman named Karen Bishop, sat at the front. Karen, the Homeowner Association president, called the meeting to order and began addressing the agenda. When it was Dave's turn to speak, he presented his case calmly but firmly. He laid out the facts: his property's exclusion from the Homeowner Association in the original deed, the lack of notification about the boundary expansion, and the aggressive fines. He even held up his documents for all to see. Karen barely glanced at them. Mr. Taylor, the Homeowner Association bylaws are binding for all properties within our jurisdiction. As I stated in our notice, the boundary changes were approved, and we are well within our legal rights. If you have further concerns, you may contact our attorney. Dave's patience snapped. You're threatening to put a lien on my home based on a rule change I never agreed to and was never informed about. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. Karen's expression hardened. Mr. Taylor, this is not the place for baseless accusations. If you disrupt this meeting further, I will ask security to escort you out. The room fell silent. Other homeowners exchanged uneasy glances. It was clear to Dave that this board wasn't interested in dialogue or fairness. They were bullies, hiding behind legal jargon and exploiting those who couldn't fight back. But Dave wasn't going to back down. If the Homeowner Association wanted a fight, he would give them one. Dave Taylor left the Homeowner Association meeting seething with frustration. The condescending attitude of Karen Bishop, the association president, only solidified his resolve. He realized this battle was bigger than just his property. It was about standing up to an organization that was exploiting its authority. That night, he spread his documents across the kitchen table, methodically reviewing every detail. The deed to his home, the purchase agreement, and the property map all confirmed the same thing: his house was explicitly excluded from the Homeowner Association's jurisdiction. Yet somehow they were claiming control over his property. Something wasn't adding up. Determined to dig deeper, Dave decided to start with the Homeowner Association's bylaws. He obtained a copy through their website, though it was buried under several layers of member-only content. The document was long and convoluted, filled with legal jargon that seemed deliberately confusing. As Dave skimmed through the text, one clause caught his attention: expansion of jurisdiction. The board reserves the right to amend the association boundaries to include properties deemed integral to the community. Dave's stomach sank. This vague clause was likely the basis for their claim. It seemed intentionally broad, designed to give the board unchecked power. The document mentioned that any boundary expansions required a majority vote from existing members, but it didn't specify any obligation to notify or gain consent from affected property owners outside the association. The implications were chilling. Could they really annex properties without the owner's approval? The next day, Dave contacted a real estate attorney, Susan Grant, who came highly recommended by a neighbor. During their meeting, he laid out the situation and handed over his documents. Susan's brow furrowed as she flipped through the papers. "This is concerning," she said. "From a legal standpoint, homeowner associations have significant leeway to govern their members. However, what they're doing here, claiming jurisdiction over properties that weren't originally part of the association, raises serious legal and ethical questions." Dave leaned forward. "Can they do this? Can they just add my property without my consent?" Susan sighed. It's not that simple. Their ability to expand boundaries depends on state laws, and these vary. In Texas, homeowner associations have some authority to amend their bylaws, but they can't legally impose those bylaws retroactively on properties that were never part of the association unless they followed specific legal procedures. Like obtaining unanimous consent from the affected property owners, we'll need to investigate how they carried out this expansion. She promised to dig into public records and look for any filings that might shed light on the association's actions. In the meantime, she advised Dave to avoid paying any fines or acknowledging the association's authority, as doing so could be interpreted as acceptance of their claims. While Susan worked on the legal side, Dave decided to investigate on his own. He spent hours at the county clerk's office, poring over public records. It was a tedious process, but his determination paid off. He found documents filed by the homeowner association that detailed the boundary expansion. The filings included a list of properties absorbed into the association's jurisdiction, and sure enough, his address was on it. What struck Dave as odd was the timing. The documents were filed almost a year ago, yet he and several of his neighbors had only received notices recently. The delay seemed suspicious, as if the association had waited until it was too late for anyone to challenge the changes. Dave also discovered something even more alarming. The homeowner association had foreclosed on 3 other properties within the expanded boundaries over the past 6 months. In each case, the properties had been seized due to unpaid fines, auctioned off, and sold at a profit. Public records showed that 2 of the foreclosed properties were sold to companies with ties to Karen Bishop, the homeowner association president. It was starting to look less like an administrative overreach and more like a calculated scheme. Dave decided to speak with his neighbors who had received similar notices. One of them, an elderly couple named Barbara and Frank Simmons, had lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years. When Dave knocked on their door, Barbara invited him in, her face lined with worry. "It's been a nightmare," she said, motioning for Dave to sit. "We've lived here since 1990. And this homeowner association has never had anything to do with us. Then, a few months ago, we got a letter saying we owed thousands in fines for things like the color of our shutters and the length of our hedges. Frank was so stressed he ended up in the hospital." Frank, sitting nearby with a blanket over his lap, nodded. "We paid them off just to make it stop. We couldn't risk them taking our home." Another neighbor, a single mother named Maria Lopez, had a similar story. She was behind on her fines and terrified of losing her house. "I don't have the money to fight them," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't even understand half the rules they say I've broken." Hearing these stories strengthened Dave's resolve. It was clear the homeowner association was targeting vulnerable residents, exploiting their lack of resources or legal knowledge. Dave promised Maria he would include her case when he took action. Susan called Dave later that week with an update. She had uncovered a critical piece of evidence: the vote to expand the homeowner association boundaries had been conducted exclusively among existing members. None of the affected property owners outside the original boundaries had been notified, let alone given a chance to vote. This violated state law, which required unanimous consent from non-member property owners for such expansions to be valid. "This is huge," Susan told Dave. "Not only is their claim on your property invalid, but their actions could expose them to lawsuits from everyone they've targeted. If we bring this to light, we can not only protect your home but also help your neighbors." Susan also suggested involving the media. Public pressure can be a powerful tool. If we get journalists to cover this story, it'll put the homeowner association under scrutiny and make it harder for them to continue these practices. Dave and Susan began building their case. They gathered evidence from public records, testimonies from neighbors, and legal precedents that supported their position. Dave also contacted a local investigative journalist, who agreed to write a story about the homeowner association's actions. The journalist interviewed several affected homeowners and began digging into the financial ties between the association and Karen Bishop. By the end of the week, Dave felt a sense of hope for the first time since this ordeal began. The homeowner association might have power, but they weren't invincible. Armed with evidence and allies, Dave was ready to take the fight to the next level. Dave Taylor sat in his kitchen, staring at the mountain of evidence he and his attorney, Susan Grant, had collected over the past weeks. The weight of the homeowner association's overreach was staggering, and now it was time to confront them. The stakes were high, not only for Dave but also for his neighbors, many of whom had suffered under the association's predatory practices. With a lawsuit filed, media coverage looming, and a growing coalition of affected homeowners, Dave was ready to take the final steps toward justice. Susan filed a comprehensive lawsuit on behalf of Dave and several neighbors, accusing the homeowner association of fraud, illegal property annexation, and violation of state property laws. The filing included evidence that the boundary expansion vote had excluded non-member property owners, violating state requirements. Financial records tying Karen Bishop, the homeowner association president, to companies that had purchased foreclosed properties. Testimonies from homeowners who had been coerced into paying exorbitant fines under threat of foreclosure. The lawsuit sought to nullify the boundary expansion, invalidate all fines and penalties imposed on the affected properties, and secure financial compensation for damages. It also demanded a full audit of the homeowner association's finances, focusing on potential conflicts of interest involving Karen Bishop and her affiliates. Meanwhile, the investigative journalist Dave had published a scathing expose titled "When Homeowner Associations Go Rogue: How One Community Fought Back." The article detailed the association's practices, highlighting stories like Barbara and Frank Simmons being fined for their shutters and Maria Lopez's fear of losing her home. It also drew attention to the suspicious financial ties uncovered by Susan, painting a picture of an association that prioritized profit over the well-being of its community. The story quickly gained traction, spreading across local news outlets and social media. Homeowner associations across the state found themselves under increased scrutiny, with some residents coming forward with similar stories. The public outcry put immense pressure on Karen Bishop and her board, who were forced to issue a defensive statement denying any wrongdoing. The case moved quickly through the legal system, thanks to the compelling evidence and public attention. The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing, with many of Dave's neighbors showing up to support him. Karen Bishop and the Homeowner Association's legal team looked visibly tense as Susan presented their case. Susan began by highlighting the blatant violations in the boundary expansion process. The Homeowner Association claims they followed the law in annexing these properties, she said, holding up the association's bylaws. Yet they failed to notify the affected property owners or secure their consent, as required by Texas state law. This expansion is not only invalid but also fraudulent. Next, Susan called Maria Lopez and Barbara Simmons to the stand, allowing them to share their experiences. Their heartfelt testimonies about the stress and financial strain caused by the association painted a clear picture of the harm inflicted on the community. The turning point came when Susan revealed the financial documents tying Karen Bishop to the companies that had purchased foreclosed properties. This is not a matter of poor governance, Susan concluded. This is a coordinated scheme to exploit homeowners and profit from their losses. The defense tried to argue that the association had acted within its rights, but the judge appeared unconvinced. The combination of legal violations, public outrage, and clear evidence of unethical behavior was too overwhelming to ignore. After several days of testimony and deliberation, the judge ruled in favor of Dave and the other plaintiffs. The verdict declared the boundary expansion illegal, nullifying all fines and penalties imposed on the affected properties. The court also ordered the Homeowner Association to reimburse homeowners who had paid fines or lost property due to foreclosure. Furthermore, Karen Bishop was found to have violated ethical standards and faced personal financial penalties. Perhaps the most significant outcome was the court-mandated audit of the Homeowner Association, which revealed widespread financial mismanagement. Karen Bishop was forced to resign, and new leadership was appointed under strict oversight. In the weeks following the verdict, the mood in the neighborhood shifted dramatically. The oppressive cloud of the Homeowner Association's overreach had lifted, replaced by a sense of empowerment and community. Dave became somewhat of a local hero, with neighbors thanking him for his determination and courage. Barbara and Frank Simmons sent him a handwritten note: "Thank you for standing up for all of us. You saved our home." Maria Lopez baked him cookies, and other neighbors chipped in to help him repair his lawn after months of neglect. The Homeowner Association, now under new leadership, announced plans to overhaul its bylaws to ensure transparency and fairness. They also promised to focus on building trust with the community rather than enforcing arbitrary fines. One evening, as Dave sat on his porch watching his kids play in the yard, he thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. The fight had been long and exhausting, but it was worth it. He had learned that standing up to injustice, even when the odds seemed insurmountable, could lead to meaningful change. He also realized the power of community. The support of his neighbors, Susan's legal expertise, and the spotlight brought by the media had all played crucial roles in achieving victory. Together, they had dismantled a system that thrived on intimidation and secrecy. Dave smiled as he sipped his coffee, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. His home was his sanctuary again, a place where his family could thrive without fear of arbitrary rules or unjust fines. And while the battle with the Homeowner Association was over, he knew he had gained something far more valuable: the confidence to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost.